Hi, this is Brian Lynch. Today we're talking about the Bonastent Tracheobronchial Stent and the steps that are needed to place the stent into a patient. The first step is to take the Bonastent out of the box. The Bonastent comes fully sterile, so you remove it from the sterile pouch and slide the catheter of the stent out of the protective housing. The Bonastent is then ready to be deployed and inserted into the patient. You can then insert the catheter, backload it over a guide wire, or you can send it down through a rigid scope under direct visualization. Once you have the stent in position, there are two ways to properly deploy it. The first is under direct visualization, where you can have a scope either side by side to the stent catheter, or the 10mm catheters will actually go through the working channel of a therapeutic bronchoscope, and you can visualize directly when the catheter comes through the working channel. Or the second way to deploy the Bonastent is under radioscopic guidance. You'll place external markers on the patient where you want the proximal and distal ends of the stent to land. You'll then use the two fluoroscopic markers on the delivery catheter, position the proximal marker slightly above where you'd like the proximal end of the stent to land. And then once you're happy with where the stent is positioned, you can start deploying. Again, once you start deploying, the stent, because it is a coaxial delivery system, does have a tendency to move forward as it's deployed. You'll have to keep the proximal marker aligned with your external proximal marker, so you may have to pull back on the catheter to do that. And you'll watch the stent deploy. Again, up to 70%. You can recapture the stent if you're not happy with where it's deploying. And really the key is to focus on the proximal fluoroscopic marker. That is the most accurate. That is where the proximal end of the stent will end up during deployment. So in order to do the side-by-side technique or through the channel technique, it is key to visualize the proximal end of the stent and to keep that in your view during deployment. The Bonastent catheter is a coaxial delivery system, so oftentimes, especially in a tighter stricture, the stent will want to move forward as you're deploying, and you need to make sure to keep the proximal end in position where you want the stent to land. So once you have the stent properly positioned, you're then ready to deploy the stent. So the key is to pin the back of the stent catheter. Some people will actually pin it onto their chest so that it doesn't move, or you can pin it with your back hand. Once you've done that, then slowly start to pull the forward part of the catheter backwards, and you'll start to unsheath the Bonastent. We suggest going extremely slow while you're deploying so that the stent doesn't move forward or a misplacement occurs. You can deploy the stent up to this red line on the catheter, which is about the 70% deployed mark. Up until that red mark or the point of no return, you can recapture the stent if you're not happy with how it's deploying, and then reposition and start your deployment again. Again, it is very key to keep the proximal end of the stent visualized. As you can see here, the stent will move forward slightly as you're deploying. The operator will need to pull the stent catheter back to keep it in the proximal landing zone so that the stent lands correctly. That is all. If you do need to reposition the stent, you can grab the edge of the stent with either a rat tooth retrieval forceps or a biopsy forceps without a needle, and simply pull the stent back and up proximally into position where you'd like it. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at customercare@therascent.com. Thank you and have a great day.